Welcome to episode 38 of Real Health Radio. You can find the links talked about as part of this episode in the show notes at www.seven, so seven health.com/38.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Health Radio. Today's another show where I have a guest, and today I'm joined with Kaila Prins. Kaila is a drag queen trapped in a woman's body, a body-positive burlesque and pole dancer, and a performing woman. She also is a body-positive wellness and recovery coach, a feminist writer and speaker, and the host of the Finding Our Hunger podcast, using intersectional feminism, health at every size, and body positivity to help disordered eaters and exercisers stop recovering and start discovering. And you can learn more about Kaila at performingwoman.com and listen to her podcast at findingourhunger.com. So I've been following Kaila's work probably for the last year or so. I would see her pop up on certain podcasts, and when I'd listen to them, I really enjoyed what she had to say. And a lot of the things that she talked about as being helpful for herself in recovery were things that I was doing with clients and noticing how beneficial they were with the clients that I work with. So in this conversation, we talk about the difference between recovery and discovery, and the difference between like full recovery and recovered enough. And I really like this area, and it's something she really focuses on. We go through the speaking gigs that she has, and how she talks about media literacy and marketing literacy. And we also look at her love of burlesque and pole dancing and how she got into this and why she thinks it's been so important as part of her recovery. So I really love this chat with Kaila, and I love what she had to say, and I hope you do too. Hey Kaila, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. So look, on your website, you are described as a motivational speaker, a workshop leader, a wellness coach, and a dance teacher, which are all things that I want to chat with you today about. But to start with, going back to the beginning, do you want to tell a little bit about your story and how you got into your line or this line of work and all these different things that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to, stop me if you've heard this, but because I talk a lot.
Sure.
But so basically, I recovered from an eating disorder. Officially, I would say I was in recovery about 4 years ago, and I would say that I finally figured it out about 2 years ago. But I was not diagnosed with an eating disorder 13 years ago, but that was what I had.
Okay.
I was 13 years old, and I became obsessed with wellness and nutrition, kind of by accident, actually. I was a neurotic little kid. I used to love, eating garlic rolls by the basket and cookie dough from the tube.
Sure.
It was pretty gross, but I loved it. And I never really had any hangups about my body that I was aware of in any significant way. I know people always write on the internet about I was a chubby kid and I was always persecuted and I always felt fat. And it's nah, not really. I just mostly wore elastic pants because they were more comfortable. That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
But I started breaking out in hives one summer at summer camp, and it was pretty much every day. And so my mom suggested, when you were a baby, you had a heightened reaction to soy on an allergy test. Maybe you're allergic to soy. And I'm like, sorry, soy is a health food, and I don't eat that. So but unfortunately, I learned that when you read the labels, soy's in everything. So I became afraid of food. So I spent the whole summer restricting my food and only eating salads and whole wheat bread and, apples and peanut butter and things that, when you read the label, didn't have any soy in it. And that kind of started me on this really scary downward spiral into anorexia, which was never diagnosed because I was, quote unquote, just being healthy. But the more I was just being healthy and restricting and losing weight, because And this was during puberty, mind you. So this was a very significant time in my life when suddenly things like looking good for boys was important for me and looking good for other girls was important for me, proving that I was a good enough person. And unfortunately, it's your looks that do the proving. But, so I pretty much became the healthy one. I learned how to exercise, and exercise became an addiction where I would be running miles every day to get to the gym and then running back. It became a measure of my self-worth. And so for about 13 years, I would yo-yo between severe restriction and what I now know as orthorexia and exercise addiction, and then periods of like binge eating and weight gain, and then going on a cleanse to try to fix it, and then gaining weight back, and then becoming a bodybuilder, and dropping out of graduate school and getting diagnosed with anorexia because I stopped getting my period because apparently too lean is a thing. And then, suddenly needing to be a vegan because my metabolism was broken from bodybuilding. And then veganism didn't work anymore. So I became paleo. And that was my most recent iteration. And that was how I started my blog. I guess, 2010, I dropped out of graduate school. I was a bodybuilder. I was finally diagnosed with anorexia, moved back in with my mother. I was actually very orthorexic because I was eating 6 meals a day. I was just scared to death of food and exercising like crazy. I didn't know what to do with my life. And I became a vegan. Veganism broke me again. And when I found paleo, I felt like I had found the answer to everything. I was like, oh, this is what's going to cure me of my restriction. This is what's going to cure me of my obsession. This is what's going to cure me of my broken metabolism and my horrible acne and my amenorrhea. Like everything's going to be better because I'm paleo. And so I started this blog to try to prove that that was how I was going to help myself. And in a way, it did help because I stopped counting calories and I started eating fat, and it gave me permission to do a lot of the things that I had never had permission to do before. Not that anyone was giving me permission for this, mind you. I had just, it was the rules writ large. And I was very attached to that identity as healing myself through paleo. And I was really convinced that that was what was going to save me. And in a lot of ways it was. But you get to a point where you're still restricted and you're still obsessed with a certain idea about what health looks like. And it stops serving you. Yeah. And I reached that point and I went, holy hell, I've built my identity. I've built a blog. I've started a podcast. I'm quote unquote helping people with paleo. But I'm not being served anymore. And that means that I'm not serving other people because I'm not living this truth fully, because it turns out it's not really true. So what happened is I had this kind of like this big moment of shift where I basically spent about 2 years trying to figure out how to fix the hole that I had dug myself into with more restriction. And I think I'm finally in a place where like I don't have any rules about food except for like don't eat the thing you are literally allergic to because your mouth will bleed. Yeah. Like that's my rule.
It's a good rule.
Yeah, it's a very good rule. And unfortunately, it's my favorite food. So, but, I don't feel restricted because I know that, like, mouth bleed is not a good thing when you eat an apple. So I just don't do it, Yeah. I'm finally in a place where, like, I'm actually reckoning with my internalized fat phobia, with a lot of the lies that I believe about what ancestral leanness should look like in a woman. And I'm in a place where nutrition and exercise are an important part of my life in that they keep me going so I can care about the things I really want to do.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what health and healthy food and all of those things are meant to be about. It's not meant to be like the be-all and end-all. It's a stepping stone to help you with everything else.
Yes, exactly. And it took me some time to actually, like, I've always said that, especially when I was paleo. Like, it's like, yeah, it's about helping me live a better life so that I can go out and do things and care about stuff, but I never had anything to fill in the blank with, like, what I actually cared about. So what I ended up caring about was good nutrition and exercise. Yeah. And so it was kind of a self feeding, what's the word? Like the Ouroboros, like the snake that's eating its own tail. Yeah. It was one of those where like I'm getting healthy so that I can care about being healthy. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good, but on its own merits, like what else is there in the world that you could care about that you're being healthy for?
Yeah. And I mean, with like your like 13 years of dealing with this stuff through your teenage years, were people concerned with what was going on, or was it being encouraged and it was like, oh, she's just the healthy one and she's like, we should be like aspiring to be like her?
Yeah, pretty much. For most of my life, nobody expressed any concern about what I was doing. I mean, I think my parents cared that I would, family dinners on Sunday nights, I would only eat peanut butter on rice cakes because I had eaten another meal that day. But nobody actually said to me like, hey, what you're doing is damaging your health. And it wasn't until I was like dropping out of graduate school and suicidal that people started to go, maybe this is an issue. But even then, nobody stopped me from going to the gym. Nobody said, like, you have to actually eat food, because what I was doing was healthy. Like, the only time that I was ever actually anorexic was in 2007 when nobody could see me, and I was actually studying in England for the summer. And, I wasn't eating, but that was it. That was the only time that I was ever not eating. I was always eating. I was always healthy. I was cooking 6 meals a day when I was at the height of my anorexia. It's just that I wasn't an anorexic. I was an orthorexic. And that most people don't even know what that is. And so you can't say to somebody who is eating 6 meals a day but is losing weight and suicidally depressed and obsessed with their food that you have a problem, because there's no diagnosis for that yet.
No. And also because as a culture, we've built that up as a good thing, not something to be worried about. Exactly.
I mean, people, when I was bodybuilding, people would stop me in the gym and ask me what I was doing, even though what I was doing could literally have killed me.
And so one of the big things I like about your work in terms of helping people to move from being in not a great place is you talk about the difference between like recovery and discovery, and also the concept of like full recovered versus recovered enough. And like, I really love these concepts, and I would like you to just explain what you mean by them and why they're so important.
Absolutely. So I think recovery is a very important period to go through, whether you have an eating disorder proper or you are a disordered eater. So somebody who's a yo-yo dieter and addicted to following meal plans and exercise plans and buying cleanses and all. I honestly think you need to go through a recovery period as well. And recovery involves a full focus on food and nutrition, because you do have to learn how to eat again. Like, it's simple enough. Like, you have to learn how to intuitively eat. You have to learn how to like celebrate when you had a cupcake, because sometimes like that is such a huge milestone in your life because you never would have accepted it before. Or even like a piece of fruit for my low carb friends. I've worked with women who have had like full on panic attacks about having a piece of fruit because that was considered a binge for them. You know what I mean? So I think you have to go through a period of recovery where you do focus on food and nutrition. And if for a lot of people who go through like anorexia or other restrictive eating disorders, they go through this period where they get very obsessed with clean eating and muscle building, and I think it's great in that frame of recovery, right? Like, because instead of trying to erase your body, you're trying to feed it and grow it, which is great. So you go through recovery. But what happens is a lot of us get stuck where I mentioned that I was stuck, which is being healthy for healthy's sake, focusing on food and nutrition and fitness to the point where it becomes and consumes your life. You become #strong, not skinny. You quit your job to become a personal trainer. You go back to school for holistic nutrition or health coaching like I did, specifically because you want to help people be healthier. Like, that was my tagline. You become very focused on maintaining leanness and proving the purity of your body. And a lot of people get stuck in this period, which it is what I call recovered enough. You're no longer starving yourself. You're not eating under 1,200 calories a day. You're not, when Oprah comes on TV to sell you Weight Watchers, you can say, screw you, Oprah, I'm not going to buy Weight Watchers. But then you go and read a bro science article on T Nation instead. So it's not like you're still in it. You're still focused on your body, fixated on your body, healthy for healthy's sake, and also trying to, quote unquote, inspire other people to do it too.
Yeah.
The trouble that I have with Recovered Enough is that it's not enough. You're still doing the behaviors, just modifying them so that you can get away with it, and convince yourself. When I say get away with, it's usually to convince yourself that you're doing something different. Often in Recovered Enough, because we then tie our monetary, our monetary value to Recovered Enough, many of us go out and become trainers and coaches, or go back to school and become dietitians, or we become fitness bloggers and get paid to wear athletic clothes and look a certain way. Because we tie our physical appearance to our monetary value in Recovered Enough, it becomes very difficult to break these behaviors. Or even if we are not physically making money, we're like aspiring to, or we want to be accepted. So there's also social capital. Like, I'm part of the paleo community, and if I am seen eating a piece of bread that isn't like being eaten ironically at Paleo FX, specifically for effects, so we can talk about how we eat in moderation, which, you know, that's not really what happens. But anyway, with the social capital, the monetary capital, the emotional investment that you make in your diet, all of this happens in Recovered Enough. And you still are faced with that horrible moment at Whole Foods when the only thing that you can eat has canola oil in it, and you can't eat it, so you must starve. You know, like, there's that moment. And I worry about it because a lot of the women who I work with get stuck there. They're like 95% of the way to, like, they're not sick anymore, but they're not well. They don't have anything else. And if they were to break their leg and lose the ability to exercise that day, then it would all go to hell and they'd have nothing left. And unfortunately, a lot of the women I work with are also exercise addicts and end up working through injury because of it, and then end up breaking their leg and have nothing left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and personally, that was me. I suffer from chronic pain now. I have tendon damage and nerve damage in my right ankle because I couldn't stop running when I needed to stop running. And to this day, I'm still dealing with it. I am an addict, and I completely admit it. You know, I'm learning how to exercise better. But even then, I've got wrist tendonitis. I haven't exercised in a really long time, and I'm dealing with the anxiety of it, and it sucks. But I'm able to work through it because I am not recovered enough.
Yeah.
So, I guess where you go from there is discovery, right? It's this concept that nobody really talks about in recovery because they're so busy focusing on food and fitness that they forget that when you erase things out of your life, like, oh, I'm going to stop focusing on food and fitness, I'm going to stop focusing on my body. When you erase all of that, the thing that has been your identity for months or more likely years, there's a giant gaping void standing in front of you.
Yeah.
And when you peer into the abyss of like, what else is there, and you see nothing, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to step into the abyss. You're going to go running in the other direction back to safety, and safety is Recovered Enough. So what I think is the most important part of kind of your food and fitness recovery is actually this other period of discovery, figuring out what else you're being healthy for, what else in your life matters more than whether or not you had canola oil or went to the gym that day. And it is a very hard, messy period because nobody can sell you a 6-week plan that teaches you the exact steps to have you discover X things in X days. It's just not, it's not feasible because discovery is all about figuring out you. Like, what do you like? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And it takes a long time, and you make mistakes, and it's scary and uncomfortable. But as long as you're doing it in an uncomfortable but not unsafe way, it's the most important thing you will ever do in your life.
And it is, I mean, when I'm working with clients in this area, so much of it is focusing on we need to be creating hobbies and we need to be creating interests and things that you genuinely enjoy doing outside of this. That almost, so you get to the point where you're like, I don't need that other thing, which has been eating in a certain way or exercising a certain way as a crutch, because I've got all of these other things going on in my life that I don't need that kind of assistance.
Yes. And so, like, I can give you a great example that actually, so here's today, right? I'm an exercise addict. I use exercise as a way to manage my anxiety. I admit that. That's a thing that's part of my life. I spent the last 3 nights in San Francisco, which is an hour from where I live. So the drive up, the drive back is a pain in the you-know-what, especially if you're driving back after like 11 o'clock at night because you're exhausted. I went to 3 different burlesque shows this weekend. I am so tired. And we had an interview this morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Normally, I would have scheduled getting up at 5 o'clock to go work out. Or I would have canceled going to see the incredible burlesque phenomenon Dita Von Teese last night because I knew that I needed to be able to wake up early to work out. In my last life, that's what would have happened. Instead, I went to the 3rd burlesque show. I saw Dita and Dirty Martini and Pearl Noir and Catherine Delish and all of these incredible burlesque icons who I never would have had the opportunity to see. I hung out with my friends, and then I woke up late this morning. I'm not going to get to work out today. And I was here on time for the interview. And you know what was more important? Going to the burlesque show last night, not getting in a 5 a.m. workout. Like, that's just it. Am I going to live? Yes. Am I going to live with this incredible memory of like watching Pearl Noir just like throw fans around the stage and just own it in this, like, I'd never get to see her ever. Like, in what universe was that really? And would it have been worth missing so I could like hurt myself because I'm technically not able to work out anyway? Like, it just, I don't know. That to me is like finding the thing that matters more and being able to rest assured in that decision and manage the anxiety from there.
Yeah. I'd be also really interested to find out like your level of interest in like nutrition and reading those kind of blogs these days. And the reason I ask is I often find people who have disordered eating or eating disorders getting into health and nutrition, kind of like with the Minnesota starvation experiment and all the participants like discovering the love of food and cooking and cookbooks and wanting to be chefs. And I find a lot of people get drawn into that kind of thing because of the disorder. And then when they get over it, that like novelty or that kind of information just like loses its power. And it's suddenly like, this stuff doesn't really interest me. Like, has that happened to you?
Oh, my Lord. Well, that is the epitome of recovered enough, is the focus on the nutrition. And I'll tell you, so when I was paleo, I mean, I had so many paleo podcasts on my phone. I used to go for 3-hour walks with my dog. And that was what I would do, is I would just listen to like the same people tell me the same information that I already believed over and over and over again. And I was fixated on it and so excited to quote unquote learn about it. And I was, I got certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, although I didn't learn anything except that nobody has any idea what they're talking about. When it comes to nutrition, it's pretty much like, to eat more plants. Like, that's pretty much it. Add some meat, add some fat, eat some plants, you're going to be okay. But anyway, tangent. But like, I was obsessed. I read every article. I researched my blog posts where it was like I was writing about, healing amenorrhea and acne and stuff like that. Like, I know anything. I'm not a scientist. And, eventually, though, I can tell you, like, the moment it happened, I was listening to a certain podcast where there's like 1 million episodes a week. And I was listening to it. It was twilight. I was walking my dog. And I was listening and going, I don't think I could do this anymore. I cannot listen to another one of these podcasts without going absolutely crazy. I have heard this before. I know this information. Why am I listening? And I finally was just like, well, but what am I going to listen to if I have to walk my dog? It was that moment. Like, well, I have to keep listening because I don't know what else there is.
Yeah. And how was it for you when you had to then walk away from paleo, which seems to be your last big identity? And look, I don't know enough about your backstory, but it seemed that you were much more invested in that than some of the other things, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, paleo was a big deal for me. It really was, because it was what helped me recover. You know, like ultimately it's like why I stopped counting calories. It's why I started eating meat again and fat and like stopped being afraid of food. And so it was a big deal. And I built a huge community through it. I built friendships around the food that I ate and taking food pictures and commenting on theirs and sharing articles about nutrition, and going to meet up every year at Paleo FX was like the most important thing for me. And I had a little bit of a crisis of identity when I had to let that go. But that being said, because I had started doing the discovery work in tandem, and I realized that I'd found things that I cared more about than nutrition, it allowed me to let go of that identity without being afraid of losing myself. You know, I have kept those friendships with the people that I care about because we've connected on other things besides the last 5 pounds and also grass-fed meat, you know, like those are things that I don't want to talk about anymore. So if those people want to stay in my life, we talk about other things. And I've continued and solidified those relationships regardless of my diet. I don't have to tell them how I'm eating, and I don't have to judge them whether or not they eat bread. Like that's just, it's a non-issue for the people that I've kept in my circle of people I care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I realized that a lot of those other friendships, if they had to go away because I eat bread now, then it's superficial and it wasn't a real friendship in the first place. So I am sad to have lost that person in my life, but I'm not all that sad about it, you know?
No, it's a pretty good litmus test if you aren't friends with someone because you eat bread or because you eat beans or you eat like something that's not on someone's list of appropriate foods. Yeah, and you know, to be honest, when I was bodybuilding, I had even said like I could never date somebody who's not a bodybuilder. I could never. Like that would just disgust me because I couldn't watch them eat, you know? And it's true. At the time, it would have disgusted me. And I felt that way a little bit about paleo, too. Like, I don't think I could date somebody who eats processed food. And, like, now that I think about it, like, really, if that's how you're judging a person's, like, worth, then I don't know. I can't really help you, you know? Yeah. So, things have changed. And ironically, I'm actually dating somebody who was a paleo blogger. But we don't talk about food in a judgmental way. It's more of a, like, this is what works for my body, so I'll eat it. Here, do you want some? Like, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And is he had the epiphany and got over paleo, or he's still quite hardcore into it? Well, what's great about it is, so he isn't hardcore into it for the ideology. For him, it's more like if you eat a certain way, there are some very bad outcomes. And like, so we went through a period where like he was trying gluten again and dairy, and it's just like, we know it doesn't work, so I don't offer him my bread. That's pretty much it. But there's no ideology attached to it in the sense of like, I am morally righteous because I'm eating this way. What the hell is wrong with you? It's more like, I wish I could have that piece of pie, but I know what's going to happen if I do. So, you know, it's like, so there's no like anger involved in it or moral righteousness. And it's kind of nice because that's not even paleo. That's just common sense. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, you know, and we're hoping that there's a way to fix all the stuff that's broken, and, you know, and I can go back to eating dairy because I am allergic to that, and he can go back to eating bread, and, you know, we'll just deal with it as it comes. So nice. One of the other things I want to go over with you is I saw on your site you do different workshops and also do workshops for like middle and high school students. And so for me, I work with clients, probably the youngest I work with, and this is just for who approaches me, is from like 20, 21, but normally it's like late 20s, early 30s and all the way up. So how is it like talking and engaging with teens in like the area of body image and self-esteem? Because I'd like to hear the kinds of stuff you chat about with them.
Well, so I now do a lot of work in media literacy and marketing literacy around body image. So, one of the things that happened to me as I shifted away from focus on nutrition was to understanding that my concepts of body image were fundamentally flawed. I really believed that even when I was quote unquote being healthy and strong, not skinny, and your body size doesn't matter, at the end of the day, I was still intensely fat phobic and scared of the idea that health could have any other look than what I had seen presented to me as healthy. So part of my discovery was challenging everything I learned in recovery. I went out and read The Gluten Lie and then interviewed the author. Yep. I went out and read Body of Truth by Harriet Brown. It is an incredible book on health at every size, and it challenged a lot of what I believed about ancestral leanness or whatever. I'm now a writer for Everyday Feminism, and I do a lot of work in intersectional feminism, which is looking at representation of marginalized identities. And the more that I surround myself by other bodies, not blonde, white, thin, young, and completely photoshopped, but looking at people from completely different backgrounds, people of different abilities, people of different gender presentations, it has opened my eyes to the fact that no body is quote unquote perfect, because there's no like bottom line of what we should all be looking like. And instead, I'm learning how to celebrate my own body within the context of that spectrum. And so when I work, whether I'm working with grownups or with kids, my focus is on teaching people how to look for representation and understand the representation that we are shown it's not real. It's not right. And what it's doing is it's skewing our perception of ourselves. I did this really fun workshop at a middle school, actually. I think it was 6th graders, and they were so much fun. When I do the workshops with kids, there's a lot of hands-on stuff because they need to be engaged. And what I had them do, and this was kind of like an underserved community, and so there were a lot of kids who were not white, lower economic status, etc. And I asked them to do this little group project where they had to go through magazines and, cut out pictures and put them in different quadrants. And what they would see is that, it was all like this, there was like nobody in the non-white category, and there was nobody in the disabled category. And there was like 2 people in the old category, but old for them was like 40, and they were seeing that the representation that they are shown of what a body is completely skewed, and that they themselves were not represented, which is really what I wanted them to see. It's like, do not believe the lies that you are sold. You deserve to be shown on the pages of this magazine too. You deserve to feel worthy and like your body has value, when I work with college students, when I work with adults, I talk more about the psychology of marketing and explain. Like, we go into like I'll show several commercials, and we'll break down like what is the message that they want you to see, and then what is the actual message. Yeah. One of my very favorites. There's a Nike commercial. Nike has this campaign called Better For It. And they released this commercial where there's a young girl on a spin bike, and we're supposed to identify with her because she has red hair, so she's not as pretty or cool as some of the models who walk in after her who are blonde. But basically, the whole commercial, it's supposed to be like it's Fitspiration. Yeah. It's encouraging you to be healthy and fit. And so she's like, I'm on a spin bike, and I always choose the second row because it's good enough. And then unless, of course, these model/actresses walk in and sit down in front of you with their perfect model/actress butts. And so, of course, these model/actresses sit down, and they have perfect butts, but so does this girl. So whatever. And then she's like, and this is oddly motivating. And so on the surface level, what it's supposed to do is tell you that, just looking at, these people who are fit and strong, like that should motivate you to keep going too. And that's great. Right. Yeah. But what they're really saying, Nike is literally making a case for why they have to continue showing bodies like this, that Nike it's selling itself. you need me to motivate you with model/actresses in order for you to be worthy. Like the actual message is saying, like, it's telling you subliminally, you need Nike to sell you this look in order for you to be considered worthy. And watching that commercial blows my mind. And so when we break it down, people recognize that maybe the overall message, like you should go out and exercise, is a good one. But the way that it's delivered is actually teaching you that Nike is instilling in you the need to look at people who are thin, lean, fit, strong, quote unquote, whatever, in order to feel whole. And it just, and going through that and understanding like how to break down the psychology of the mere exposure effect and, the backfire effect and all of these things that actually create beliefs that we don't even necessarily need to hold. It's a lot of fun. And I do it in drag now too. That's my new thing.
I think I saw a picture of you on Instagram dressed up looking somewhat like Barbie or something like that. So what's the story behind that?
I am a drag queen now, not a drag king, which is when a woman dresses up as a man. I'm a drag queen, where I'm a woman imitating a man and imitating a woman. Because for me, female sexuality has never been something that I've felt comfortable with. One of the big drivers of my anorexia and the constant relapses was feeling uncomfortable in a sexualized body, which is important for media and marketing literacy, because once you understand why and how the female body, a woman's body, whatever, has been sexualized over the years, the danger inherent in existing in this body becomes clear, and I can kind of work through it. But becoming a drag queen for me, I always felt like whenever I dressed up, I was in drag. Like I was always pretending to be a woman, not necessarily actually a woman, even though I identify as a woman. It's very weird sounding, I'm sure. But so when I actually discovered that there are female drag queens, it became a way for me to play within the world of female sexuality and living in this quote unquote woman's body in a safe, exaggerated way that it just gives me room to explore. So when I started dancing burlesque, that's my burlesque persona is a drag queen. And I was recently hired to speak at the Miami University of Ohio, and I gave this talk that I finally refined, and I really enjoy this one. But the idea is that, I show them, I come out dressed as Barbie in this exaggerated female form with very exaggerated makeup. And at the end of the talk, I show them a picture of what I really look like. And the idea is to kind of map to this idea that there is a mere exposure effect, that even just by being exposed to something for a time, you come to favor it. And to gauge the reaction of what an unmade up face looks like after you've been staring at the made up version for an entire hour or hour and a half. And so it worked out perfectly. I was very excited about it. And I think I'm just going to do all my talks in drag now. Mostly because I love wearing drag makeup, but
what you said there did remind me. There was this great coffee table book that a friend had, and it was either 50 or 100 porn stars, and on one side it had them with absolutely no makeup on, and on the other one it had them fully made up, and it was it was really interesting to see that kind of side by side and what they look like very much in reality.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, when we see quote unquote unmade up people in the media, they're always actually wearing makeup, which is always kind of hilarious. There's a feminist response to what men say to me at different levels of makeup. If you go down that rabbit hole in Twitter, and usually they'll comment oh, she looks so great without makeup. And it's oh no, dude, she's totally wearing foundation and eyeliner, but yeah, it's an interesting effect. And I like playing with that perceptions of reality thing in real time, not just showing, what's going on in a magazine, because I think it's much more tangible when you can actually experience it yourself.
Yeah. And so, look, you've mentioned a couple of times about the burlesque. I know you do pole dancing as well. So how did that come about? Was that something you'd done for a long time? Is it part of your recovery?
Yeah. So when I was going through this period of like, well, what do I do if I don't do health? I had to start figuring out what I liked, which is scary because I had no idea. Since I in my entire adult life, I had no things that I liked except nutrition and fitness. So I started dating in 2014, just kind of like practicing, going out and gauging other people's reactions to the world. I got involved with voiceover. So I started taking voiceover classes in San Francisco, and that was great. And I loved it. And then I went on a date with some guy that I met on Tinder, and we actually ended up dating for a little while, and he had a friend who was a burlesque dancer, and he said, let's go to the city tonight. I want you to come with me to see my friend. She's not dancing tonight, but there's a show. So I said, oh yeah, sure. Why not? I've never been. I sat near the stage, and I just watched these women of all sizes. Like, I'm not kidding. There was it was crazy because I'd never seen representation of other bodies in this way, where women got on stage and regardless of how they looked, did this it was sexual and beautiful and titillating and exciting, and they were in their own power, and there were no people jeering because somebody was plus sized or whatever. People were screaming and hooting and hollering, and they were happy and not trying to hide themselves. Literally, you can't hide yourself in a burlesque show because you're taking your clothes off. Yeah. And I was like, I want to do that. I'm done. Like, the next morning, I was online researching burlesque classes. And the problem is, where I live, there were at the time no burlesque classes. There was one burlesque fitness class at a pole dance studio. And I went to that and I was like, this is okay. But it was more about like focusing on your abs. And I was like, maybe that's not really burlesque for me, but there is pole dance. And I took a sensual dance class. I took an intro to pole class, and I fell in love. I've been at the studio now for a year and a half. Maybe more actually. And I adore it. Like, it's a great safe place. It's a very they're very focused on like, whatever size you are, whatever ability you are, just, be in your own body. And so I started pole dancing, and I loved the hell out of it. And it turns out that the guy who is now my boyfriend is friends with some burlesque dancers, and he introduced me to them, and they got me involved in the scene, and they're actually building a burlesque community down in the South Bay where I live. We now have a regular burlesque show at the San Jose Improv. I'm performing again April 26th, if anyone out there's listening, and then again in June. And I'm actually teaching my very first burlesque class at my pole studio on May 14th. So I'm very excited. I do burlesque at least twice a month. Like, I actually perform it, and I obviously, is evidenced by my earlier conversation, I go up to the city sometimes just to go enjoy other people doing it, because I want to see more bodies. I want to see more people loving their bodies and not hiding it. It's the best.
Yeah, and you are not the first person I've heard who's used either pole dancing or burlesque, or more burlesque. I haven't heard so much, but pole dancing is definitely one of those things that I've heard encouraged a lot, just because it changes the focus on how someone moves their body and thinks about their body, etc., as part of that recovery period.
100%. And, and especially for me, as I mentioned, having this body, like having been assigned female at birth and identifying as female, has been always very dangerous for me. And when I was anorexic, I really literally was trying to erase every sign that I was female. And I did in a lot of ways. Amenorrhea, I didn't even need to buy bras anymore. And I was shopping in the little boys section at Target, no joke. But now, learning how to embrace that sexuality and not even have to perform it for anybody else but myself, has really been so enlightening and so empowering that I want to help other people who want to experience that too. And I actually just started giving private pole lessons at home, and I'm doing it with plus size women because, anyone can do it. Sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, as a plus size woman, just to, start to build up the strength and the ability to do certain moves. But there's an incredible plus size pole community. that actually Roz the Diva, who is a plus-size pole dancer in New York, she started a plus-size pole competition that was just taken over by a woman in Colorado. And so you can do it. Anybody can do it. And if you don't want to do the strength stuff of pole, burlesque, you can do with almost zero effort. Like if you can take gloves off or if you can take, like if you've got a way to take your dress off, you're done. You're a burlesque dancer. You just need to like paste some pasties on. And you can do it with all abilities too. There's an entire like disabled burlesque scene. So,
wow.
Anyone can do it. Yeah. It's pretty wonderful. And
you run a podcast or host a podcast called Finding Our Hunger. And look, I'm a massive fan. I regularly send your episodes to clients to listen to. How long have you been doing the show, and how has it changed over time from when you first started to where you are now?
Oh, goodness. So I've been doing the show for, I think, 3 years, which is a little bit insane. Okay. I just published episode 146, but I've got more of them recorded and I'm ready to go out. But yeah, so I started it as a duo with my friend Ito Agayere, and she lives in New York City. We had gone to graduate school together, and I dropped out after a year, and she stayed. And we had started talking after I started writing my blog, and she said, I don't have anorexia, but I experienced a lot of the same feelings that you felt during graduate school about my body, because as an actress, she's an actress, I was a writer, but as an actress, there's an intense scrutiny on your body and on needing to look a certain way. Yeah. And so we started talking, and we would have these incredible conversations. And at the time, when I was obsessed with paleo podcasts, I was like, I want to start a podcast. And as we were talking, I can't remember like who said it, but one of us was like, hey, we should record these and share it with other people. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the podcast. This is the one I needed to start. So we would interview people in the eating disorder recovery and paleo communities with kind of a focus on paleo, but mostly on body image. And that went on for, a couple years. And Ito, sadly, but for me and fortunately for her, went from struggling actress to like winning awards. So she is very busy, and her schedule is insane. And also with a 3-hour time difference, it was difficult to schedule her and me and a guest in a different time zone. Yeah. Because I work a 9 to 5 in California, and she works actors hours in New York. And then I'm, on the phone with people in England, which is, so it was a little bit crazy. And so she kind of transitioned out of the podcast. And I was still very focused on paleo, but at the time I had started having these thoughts of like, maybe this isn't it. And so finally, I guess in June was when I really June of 2015 is when I started really asking guests on who were challenging my paradigm. But it had been months and months and months of like, this isn't the right thing before then. So, now the focus is really on health at every size, on feminism, on and intersectional feminism, on eating disorder recovery, on discovery, on figuring out what it is that you need to be doing right now to get to a place where you're uncomfortable but not unsafe, and it's not about your body. And especially in seeking other kinds of representation and other viewpoints and challenging this, the prevailing thinking of diet culture. So the podcast, it's been a lot of fun. I actually... I'm kind of struggling at the moment to manage my own discovery and maintain my own discovery while also editing a podcast and working a 9 to 5 and teaching classes, and performing. But it's one of those things where it is the most important thing in my life, and the audience that I've built, and I don't know if you experience this, but, I've come to know so many of the listeners who've reached out, who are friends with me on Facebook, who follow my Instagram posts and leave comments about the cute things my dog does. Like, I've come to know a lot of these people. Yeah. And I care so deeply that like, I kind of can't do the podcast anymore. It's from a time investment thing, but I keep doing it because I don't want anyone to like hurt or not have help. And for a lot of people, like getting help is very expensive or inconvenient, or they're not ready. And so like, I'm still doing it because I can't help everybody, so I want to help everybody. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's so important to me to make sure that this message gets out there regularly, that there is life beyond your nutrition, and you don't have to stop eating well in order to eat well. You know, at no point did anyone say you have to eat cupcakes. It's just that cupcakes aren't the end of the world, and talking about why cupcakes are the end of the world isn't what you're here on earth to do.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time when I'm chatting with people, it's the more important thing is how you think about your food as opposed to what you're actually eating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I mean, I'm at this place right now in my own life where, like, food just, it so doesn't even interest me at all. Like, I don't want to cook. I just don't care. You know, like, I eat it. I love eating, but I just don't even want to think about it. I don't want to be mindful and savor I'm just like, you know what, forget it. I got to eat. Let's go. I got a dance class to get to. And, you know, and I think getting to that place where you can detach from needing to savor everything as well can be really good, because you can then just focus on yourself. And I'm sure I'll get back to a place where I cook more and I care more, but you know, right now I'm having so much fun that it's like, whatever, there's a Whole Foods near my house. I can just go to the salad bar on the way to work.
Which I think is really important, because I find some of the focus around intuitive eating can be so much that every meal has to be this amazing experience, and you have to really want to savor everything and got to love what you're eating, etc. And a lot of time, like, no, you just need food to become more functional. And it needs to stop being this big important thing in your life. Like, I'm terrible with Instagram. I'm terrible with taking photos of my food and all of that, because most of the stuff I eat is pretty functional. And I enjoy it that way. And I just, as you said, like, I've got things to do. So I eat and then I get on with other stuff.
Exactly. And that's the difference between recovery and discovery. Recovery is like, you do need to go through that period where focusing on your food, it's important, because you have to learn how to enjoy food again. You have to learn how to enjoy it and to sit with it and be okay with it and all of that and make peace with it. But eventually, you know, you stop taking pictures of it because nobody really cares, you know, including you.
No, that like, it's the stepping stone as opposed to being the final destination.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, if I do take pictures of my food, it's because it's like this incredible presentation of like literally you go through my Instagram, I think there might be like 2 or 3 pictures of food total, you know, but for the most part, I'd rather just like eat it and enjoy the meal and, you know, be with the people I'm with than have to share a picture of what I ate to prove how healthy it was.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, like, once you get past the point of having to prove anything to anyone, I think that's when you're getting to that place of full recovery, as opposed to I have to be showing off to everyone what my eating represents, who it, like how my eating is part of my identity, etc., etc.
Exactly.
Well, look, I'm really conscious of time, and I know you need to get going, but I just want to find out from you, for people who've enjoyed what you have to say, where should they be going to find out more information? And also, if you have any stuff coming up that you want to be plugging or talking about, then go for it.
Yeah. So right now, if you want to find like the central hub of everything I do, that's just at performingwoman.com, because I am a performing woman who is performing woman. It's easy to remember. If you want to find me on any of the social media, or as I call it, all of the things, it's all at performing woman. The podcast is at findingourhunger.com, although that's linked at Performing Woman. But you can find Finding Our Hunger on, and you know, whatever you're listening to this on, you can find Finding Our Hunger there. And there is a book club. Every month I release kind of like one book that we can talk about in the online book club. It's at Facebook.com/Finding Our Hunger Book Club. You can just search it in Facebook. It'll come up. And yeah, so right now, my big focus is on teaching. So if you're in San Jose or in the San Francisco Bay Area, I have my first burlesque class on May 14th, but hopefully there'll be more. So performingwoman.com/dance. You can find out how to dance with me or come see me perform. And the last thing, I know so many things. The last thing is
I'll
I am
link to
actually
all of these in the show notes so people can find them there as well.
Awesome. And I'm in the process of trying to work on a program. It's going to be focused on discovery. So keep your eyes on the website. It's slow going just because I'm doing so much stuff all at once and I'm a single person. But my goal is to have something for everybody this year. So, now that I've said it out loud, it has to happen.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Well, look, Kaila, thank you so much for joining me on the show. As I said, I really love your podcast. I love reading your blog, and everything that you're doing. It's really inspiring. And as I said, I send so many of my clients to your stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so honored. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Real Health Radio. If you are interested in more details, you can find them at the 7 Health website. That's www.7health.com.